Happy Tax Franchising presents the weekly industry strategy session. Here's CEO Mario Costanz.
Hi, I'm Mario Costanz, also known as the Problem Solver. I'm the CEO of Happy Tax Franchising. Thank you for joining us. In this week's session, I'll address an article published by Dylan Matthews on news website Vox earlier this month, attacking H&R Block and its position as a tax prep company. We'll post a link to the piece below. First, I'd like to say, great piece, Dylan. Well researched. Nice writing. Lots of hyperlinks. Awesome headline. A clear agenda without stating both sides of the story. Up front, I am a no big fan of H&R Block. They're a competitor of ours. I do respect them, even though I don't think their model is the future of this industry. Their founder, Henry Block, is an inspiring entrepreneur whom I look up to. That said, I would like to cover some points discussed in the article that I find need more elaboration and perspective from someone in the tax prep industry. The title of Dylan's article is H&R Block Snuck Language into a Senate Bill to Make Taxes More Confusing for Poor People. Dylan, did BuzzFeed write that for you? It implies that H&R Block writes our laws, not our government. And taxes can be confusing for everyone, not just poor people, Dylan. I'm sure that poor people don't appreciate you implying that they're not capable of reading some additional questions on a tax form. Dylan starts off the article saying that H&R Block's entire business model is premised on taxes being confusing and hard to file. Dylan, that's not true. Their business model is based on most people wanting a service of someone to do a tedious task for them. A task that in itself is a hard one for most people who aren't financially savvy, or in today's age of software, completely comfortable preparing a tax return themselves online. H&R Block started out in 1955, when tax returns were much simpler, and even so back then, people didn't trust the IRS to prepare their tax returns for them, so they turned to private industry, which simply does it better and more efficient. Dylan goes on to state that H&R Block's latest lobbying effort is loathsome, and that the company's instigation the Senate passed the funding bill to at least quadruple the length of the form that taxpayers fill out to get an earned income tax credit. What Dylan is failing to mention, a couple key items here. First off, there are currently dual standards for filing for an earned income tax credit. A taxpayer who's self-filing their returns is required to answer substantially less questions in order to qualify for the credit if they're self-preparing their return than if they're using a tax professional. The IRS instituted this in 2012 to combat some of the $16 to $19 billion of EITC payments it makes yearly improperly due to fraud or others. The reason for the change was to require these additional questions was to combat some of this fraud, and it has worked. Dylan, why shouldn't those self-preparing their returns be held to the same standards? Dylan then states that EITC expands the market for parasitic tax companies like H&R Block and Intuit. Parasitic tax companies? Dylan, tell us how you really feel. Why all the hate towards the free market? The changes in the proposed laws your article talks about do nothing to stop people from using free tax prep centers that the IRS and other organizations operate. Clearly, those who qualify to have their tax prepared at a free center and yet still choose to go to a paid service are making that choice on their own and not being forced to go there. Instead of calling free market companies parasitic, maybe realize that they're more convenient, or that taxpayers just don't trust the government to prepare their returns, or that they like the experience and want a professional to prepare their returns. I'll have a point-by-point discussion of each of Dylan's points posted alongside with this video. I urge those in the industry and those thinking of starting in this industry to email Dylan and let him know what you think, as I have. Have a wonderful and productive rest of the week, and take care. For more information on Happy Tax, go to gethappytax.com or email me at mario@happytax.com. Happy Tax. Smile, it's time to file.